Mark, I think many English learners struggle with common mistakes that slow their progress. Identifying and avoiding these mistakes can really speed up learning. What do you think are the most frequent errors?
Absolutely, Anna. One big area is confusion with verb tenses, especially past simple and present perfect. Many learners mix them up, which can change the meaning of their sentences. Understanding when to use each tense clearly is crucial.
Yes, like saying I have went instead of I have gone. Or using past simple when the present perfect is needed, such as I visited Paris last year versus I have visited Paris. It's subtle but important.
Right. The present perfect connects past actions with the present, while past simple refers to completed past events. Teaching learners to spot time markers like already, yet, or last year helps clarify which tense to use.
Another common mistake is articles, using a, n, and the incorrectly or omitting them entirely. They're small words but tricky for many learners.
Definitely. Articles depend on whether the noun is specific or general, singular or plural. For example, I saw a cat versus I saw the cat. Overusing or missing articles changes meaning and sounds unnatural. Practice and exposure help learners get a feel for correct usage.
Prepositions also cause trouble. Saying married with someone instead of married to someone, or interested on instead of interested in. These small errors affect clarity.
Prepositions are often idiomatic and don't follow strict rules, which makes them difficult. Learners need to memorize common collocations like interested in, good at, or depend on. Reading and listening to natural English help internalize these patterns.
Pronunciation errors can create misunderstandings too. For instance, confusing sheet and a certain rude word because of vowel sounds.
That's a classic example. Mispronouncing similar sounds leads to embarrassment or confusion. Focused pronunciation practice on minimal pairs, words that differ by one sound, helps learners distinguish and produce sounds accurately.
Spelling mistakes are also frequent, especially with words like there, and there. They sound similar but have different meanings.
Homophones like these confuse many learners. Using context clues and practicing writing in sentences rather than isolated words reduces errors. Visual aids and memory tricks can help as well.
What about sentence structure? I often see learners say she can to swim instead of she can swim. Modal verbs can be confusing.
Yes, modal verbs like can, must, should don't take to before the main verb. It's important to teach learners these exceptions early on. Also, word order in questions or negatives is another area where mistakes happen frequently.
Speaking of word order, I notice errors like I very like this instead of I like this very much. Adverbs can be tricky to place correctly.
Exactly. Adverbs of manner, frequency, or degree have specific placements in sentences. Teaching learners common adverb positions and giving plenty of examples improves their accuracy and naturalness.
Another mistake is overusing very and relying on weak adjectives. Instead of saying very good, learners can say excellent or fantastic to sound more fluent.
Building a strong vocabulary helps learners express themselves more vividly. Introducing synonyms and encouraging the use of varied adjectives reduces repetitive and dull speech.
Many learners also confuse countable and uncountable nouns, like informations instead of information.
Yes, uncountable nouns don't have plural forms and require different quantifiers, such as some information or a piece of advice. Teaching these distinctions with plenty of examples is essential.
What about common mistakes in question formation?
Learners often forget to invert the subject and auxiliary verb, for example saying, you like pizza, instead of, do you like pizza? Practice with yes/no questions and wh questions is necessary to fix this.
Lastly, I'd say using too many direct translations from their native language causes awkward phrasing. English has its own idioms and expressions that don't translate literally.
Exactly, Anna. Encouraging learners to learn phrases and collocations as chunks helps them avoid literal translations and sound more natural. Exposure to native material and correction helps in this area.
These are great points, Mark. I think addressing these common mistakes with fun and engaging methods will really help learners progress faster.
I agree. Making correction enjoyable and giving plenty of real-life examples keeps learners motivated.
Let's start with verb tenses. Many learners mix up the past simple and present perfect. Can you explain some easy ways to avoid this mistake?
Sure, Anna. The key is understanding the difference in usage. Past simple talks about actions completed at a specific time in the past, like, I visited London last year. Present perfect connects past actions with the present moment, such as, I have visited London. It's often used with words like already, yet, or just.
That makes sense. So, learners should look for time markers to decide which tense to use.
Exactly. If there's a clear past time mentioned, use past simple. If not, and the focus is on experience or results, use present perfect. Practicing with timelines and examples helps learners grasp this.
Moving on to articles, what common mistakes should learners watch out for?
A big one is dropping articles before singular countable nouns, like saying, I have dog, instead of, I have a dog. Another is confusing a and an before vowels and consonants, or overusing the for general ideas, like, the cats are cute, instead of, cats are cute.
How can learners get better with articles?
Reading lots of English texts and noticing how articles are used is helpful. Also, exercises that require filling in articles in sentences build awareness. Remembering that a and an are for one unspecified thing, and the is for specific things helps.
Prepositions are a big challenge too. What are some common errors and fixes?
Learners often say married with instead of married to, or interested on instead of interested in. Since prepositions don't follow logical rules, the best way is learning common collocations. Flashcards with phrases like good at, depend on, or afraid of can help.
What about pronunciation mistakes? Any examples that learners should be careful about?
Yes. Words like ship and sheep differ by one vowel sound but have very different meanings. Confusing them can lead to misunderstandings. Practicing minimal pairs, words that differ by a single sound, is essential to improve clarity.
Spelling is another tricky area. Homophones like there, and there confuse many learners.
True. The best strategy is to learn them in context and practice writing sentences. Also, mnemonic devices can help, like remembering there relates to possession, there to place, and there as a contraction of they are.
Sentence structure errors, such as she can to swim, often trip learners up. How do we fix this?
Modal verbs like can, must, and should never take to before another verb. Teaching this rule explicitly and drilling examples is necessary. Also, questions and negatives need the correct auxiliary verbs and word order.
Adverb placement mistakes are frequent. For instance, saying I very like this. How do learners master adverb placement?
Learners should know that adverbs of degree like very usually come before the adjective or adverb they modify, so it's I like this very much. Listening to native speakers and practicing common adverb positions in sentences help internalize the pattern.
Learners often rely too much on very. How can we encourage more varied vocabulary?
Introducing synonyms and encouraging the use of stronger adjectives or adverbs makes speech more vivid. For example, instead of very good, say excellent or fantastic. Word lists and thesauruses are great tools for this.
Countable versus uncountable nouns confuse many learners. Can you clarify?
Sure. Countable nouns have plural forms, books, cars, while uncountable nouns, information, advice, do not. Quantifiers differ too, many books, but much information. Teaching these categories with examples and practice exercises is crucial.
Forming questions is another tricky area. Learners sometimes say you like pizza, instead of do you like pizza?
Right. English questions usually invert the subject and auxiliary verb. For present simple, do or does is used. Teaching question forms with drills and conversation practice helps learners build accuracy.
Literal translations from learners' native languages often cause awkward phrasing. How can we help learners sound more natural?
Encourage learning phrases and collocations as chunks rather than word-by-word translation. Exposure to native materials, correction, and practice in context make learners internalize natural expressions.
These common mistakes can be frustrating, but addressing them with clear explanations and practice makes learning fun and effective. Ready to explore examples and practice tips?
Definitely, Anna. Understanding these mistakes is the first step toward mastery.
Mark, I'd like to focus on some practical strategies for correcting those common mistakes we talked about. What do you suggest learners do daily to improve?
Great idea, Anna. Consistent practice is key. I recommend learners set aside time each day to focus on one specific mistake, like articles or verb tenses, and do targeted exercises. Repetition and focused attention help build muscle memory and reduce errors.
That makes sense. What kinds of exercises work best for these specific areas?
For verb tenses, fill-in-the-blank activities with sentences that use both past simple and present perfect can be very effective. For articles, learners can practice by reading paragraphs and identifying where a, an, or the are used, then trying to write their own sentences with correct articles.
I also find that speaking practice helps. Do you think learners should try speaking exercises focused on grammar or mistakes?
Absolutely. Speaking forces learners to apply what they've learned in real time. Simple sentence drills aloud, such as, I have eaten, she went, help build automaticity. Role-plays or storytelling activities where learners pay attention to tenses and articles promote practical use.
How about using technology for practice? Are there apps or tools that can help correct common mistakes?
Yes, plenty. Apps like Grammarly or language learning platforms provide instant feedback on writing, pointing out errors in articles, prepositions, or verb forms. Speech recognition software can help with pronunciation mistakes. Using these tools regularly reinforces correct usage.
What role does reading play in reducing common mistakes?
Reading is huge. Exposure to well-written texts helps learners see correct grammar, vocabulary, and sentence structure in context. They absorb patterns subconsciously. Reading aloud adds a speaking component that reinforces pronunciation and fluency.
Listening is important too, right?
Definitely. Listening to native speakers through podcasts, movies, or audiobooks lets learners hear correct grammar and pronunciation naturally. Shadowing exercises, repeating what they hear, help imitate native patterns and reduce mistakes.
How can learners handle frustration when they keep making the same errors?
Patience and mindset matter. Learning a language is a gradual process. Encouraging learners to view mistakes as part of learning helps reduce anxiety. Keeping a journal of progress and small successes boosts motivation. Taking breaks when frustrated is also important.
Can you explain how teachers or tutors can best support learners with common mistakes?
Teachers should provide clear explanations and examples, then create lots of meaningful practice opportunities. Gentle correction that focuses on improvement rather than criticism encourages learners. Personalizing feedback based on individual mistakes is also effective.
Are peer interactions helpful in correcting mistakes?
Very much so. Practicing with peers creates a supportive environment where learners can try out new language without fear. Peers can point out errors and offer corrections in a friendly way. Group activities like games or discussions motivate learners to practice more.
What's your advice for learners who feel self-conscious about making mistakes when speaking?
Remember that all learners make mistakes, even native speakers. Focus on communication, not perfection. The more you speak, the the more comfortable you become. Practicing in low-pressure situations, like talking to yourself or language exchange partners, builds confidence.
Are there any specific tips to avoid common mistakes in writing?
Proofreading is essential. Learners should review their writing carefully and use tools like spell checkers or grammar apps. Reading writing aloud helps catch errors. Peer or tutor feedback also improves writing quality. Regular writing practice strengthens skills.
How do you suggest balancing error correction with encouraging fluency?
It's important to balance correction and positive reinforcement. During fluency practice, focus on communication without interruption. Then, set aside time for focused correction and drills. This approach keeps learners motivated while improving accuracy.
Can mistakes sometimes be a sign of creativity or language experimentation?
Yes. Mistakes show learners are actively experimenting with language. Encouraging this risk-taking fosters growth. Over time, repeated practice refines errors into correct usage.
What final advice would you give learners wanting to minimize common English mistakes?
Practice regularly, focus on one mistake at a time, use varied materials, and maintain a positive mindset. Surround yourself with English, speak often, and don't fear errors, they're stepping stones to fluency.
Let's talk about some fun activities learners can do to avoid these common mistakes while keeping the process enjoyable. What do you suggest?
Sure, Anna. Games like Error Hunt are excellent. Learners read a short passage filled with common mistakes and try to find and correct them. It turns learning into a challenge and sharpens error-spotting skills.
I like that. What about speaking games?
Role reversal is great for speaking. Learners act as teachers correcting mistakes in dialogues. It boosts awareness of errors and practices polite correction in conversations.
How can learners practice articles in a fun way?
Creating article stories works well. Write a short story using as many articles as possible correctly. Then share with friends or tutors for feedback. It's creative and reinforces article usage naturally.
For verb tenses, what exercises help learners internalize correct forms?
Story sequencing helps. Learners arrange sentences from a story in the correct order and explain the tense used in each. This contextualizes verb forms and makes grammar less abstract.
Spelling challenges?
Crossword puzzles or word searches focused on commonly misspelled words engage learners visually and cognitively. These games make spelling practice interactive.
Pronunciation?
Tongue twisters and minimal pairs drills are fun and effective. They improve clarity and distinguish tricky sounds.
How about technology-supported activities?
Language apps often have gamified exercises that correct mistakes instantly. Participating in online forums or chat groups also provides real-time practice and feedback.
Do you have tips for learners to self-correct during speaking?
Listening to recordings of themselves helps. Also, slowing down speech allows learners to monitor and adjust errors as they speak.
What about group work or classroom settings?
Group storytelling, debates, and peer feedback sessions encourage active use of English and create safe spaces to make and learn from mistakes.
How important is humor in correcting mistakes?
Humor lowers anxiety and makes learners more receptive to correction. Funny examples or light-hearted corrections build rapport and motivation.
Can you share a memorable example where correcting mistakes led to a breakthrough?
A learner once confused borrow and lend, saying, "Can you borrow me your book?" After a few funny corrections, she practiced until it stuck. That moment boosted her confidence and helped her communicate clearly.
That's inspiring. What final encouragement would you give learners struggling with mistakes?
Embrace mistakes as natural and valuable. Each one is a step closer to mastery. Stay curious, enjoy learning, and remember that every expert was once a beginner.
Thank you, Mark. I'm sure our listeners will find these insights and tips both helpful and motivating.
Thanks, Anna. Let's keep supporting learners on their journey to fluent, confident English.